Good evening, my people. Welcome once again to the 1759 podcast, where we discuss politics and governance while having some drinks. Today, what difference will it make if many Nigerians support return of the country's sovereignty back to the people, give reasons to support the case to void the 1999 constitution, insist Nigeria cannot move forward without restructuring our framework, want another doctrine of necessity? On the last episode, we've committed to tracing the constitutional journey of Nigeria from 1960 to 1999. That is what we are going to be doing on this episode to further substantiate the illegality and the illegitimacy of the 1999 Constitution. So come with me, we are going to land in a sensible place. We will start from 1962. And why are we starting from that year? Well, because in 1960, we had an independent constitution which was coordinated, supervised by the British colonialists and handed over to Nigerian leaders at independence. But they left their mark in that constitution by making the Queen of England the head of state of Nigeria. But in 1962, Nigeria took steps to remove this mark by initiating the process to amend the 1960 Constitution. The first thing they did was to make a law which is the Constitutional Referendum Act of 1962, and that act established referendum as the mechanism for the Nigerian people to approve a new constitution following the amendments. This was the stage set for the 1963 Constitution to now come into law. So, it was via a referendum that Nigerians all over the country agreed to all the amendments and contents of that constitution. And in that constitution that came into effect in 1963, there is a specific section of interest. Chapter 14, Section 34 of that constitution states that there shall be a president of the republic who shall be elected to office in accordance with Section 35 of that constitution and shall be the head of state of the federation and the commander-in-chief of the armed forces of Nigeria. Now, the word elected is emphasized, and there were many references to Nigeria being a democratic society in that constitution. There was no provision for any other form of takeover of governance, including military coup, in that constitution. Please note that. Now, going to 1966, unfortunately, we had some military men overthrew democracy in Nigeria. They then went to promulgate Military Decree 1 of 1966, which abolished constitutional democracy in Nigeria. This is the first treasonable action and a breach of Nigeria's constitution because our country did not make provision for any military takeover or for them to even assume the role of lawmaker. Following this treasonable act, we had the civil war due to the immaturity of the military leaders, and then we had another military coup and yet another military coup. So we had a series of illegitimate and treasonable actions from that 1966 to 1979. In 1979, I think before 1979, sometimes in 1978, we had the Constituent Assembly, which was supposedly made up of elected people to represent Nigerians in a constitutional conference where they deliberated and agreed to have a 1979 constitution. Now, that was the first time we were moving away from the parliamentary system of government to presidential system of government. Some may argue that, this is the constitution of the people, but I tend to disagree. The question we should ask: who governed the convocation of the 1978 Constituent Assembly? Who issued the decree bringing the 1979 Constitution into law? And on whose authority and sovereignty was that Constitution promulgated into law? If we can answer all those questions, I'm sure you will conclude on the fact that the military government, being an illegitimate government, cannot give us a constitution. An illegitimate action cannot create a legitimate result. The military decree that brought that 1979 Constitution into effect is an illegitimate act. I hope you are with me. Let's continue this journey. In 1979, one would have expected that when Shehu Shagari became president, he would have set in motion a mechanism for the people of Nigeria to then give legitimacy or reject that 1979 constitution in its entirety as handed over by the military government. Interestingly, Shehu Shagari was a member of the democratic government of 1960 to 1966. The expectation was he would have also relied on that Referendum Act of 1962 to carry out a referendum for the Nigerian people to confirm that they are happy with the 1979 constitution, knowing fully well that the military government inserted their own clauses without the consent of Nigerians. On to the next, another military government overthrew Shehu Shagari, and they came up with their own military decree, which again abolished constitutional democracy in Nigeria. And they also, assumed the role of lawmaker by issuing military decrees. This, we can say, was the second treasonable act of few military men, which they passed on for one head of state to the other till 1999. Please note, few military men. We are not talking of the whole military. We respect our servicemen. We are just picking the very few who undemocratically removed governments in Nigeria. In 1999, we had another military decree. General Absalami Abubakar and his team, in less than a year, gave us a constitution. The 1999 Constitution is the worst of all the illegalities because in just 1 year, the document was put together by that illegitimate government without any input from the people. Let's not forget that we had the 1993 presidential election, which was won by the late Chief MK Abiola, and the Nigerian people were still grappling with the shock of his death and eager to discuss the way forward for the country. But these people, they did not even consult any of us. They quickly put the constitution together and handed it over to General Olusegun Obasanjo, who is also, one of the veterans in the military game of running the country. Well, I think we have said this in previous episode. One would have expected Obasanjo to also, put in place a motion or set in motion a mechanism for the people of Nigeria to give legitimacy or reject that 1999 constitution in its entirety as handed over by the military government. Now, let's set out the footprint again. Then let's try give thumbs up to those milestones that we feel are legal and legitimate. So yes, the Referendum Act of 1962, because it was produced by the people as represented by democratically elected leaders. 1963, yes, that constitution was produced by the people via a referendum and members of the parliament. 1966, the military decree. That was, like I said, the first treasonable act of the military. So let's knock that off. 1979 as well, because an illegitimate military government cannot produce legitimate documents. 1979 democracy, that's the government of Shehu Shagari, a thumbs down. We are not taking that completely off, but thumbs down because, like I said, one would have expected Shehu Shagari to have subjected that 1979 constitution to a referendum for Nigerians to validate its legitimacy. Definitely, the military decree of 1984 should be considered illegal, so let's take that out. Likewise, the 1999 military decree, which produced the 1999 constitution. The 1999 constitution too, obviously. Let's look at Nigeria's legitimate constitutions after carrying out that exercise. 1960 constitution, yes, that's Nigeria's constitution at independence in 1960, so valid. 1963 constitution too, yes. 1999 constitution, that's the question mark. I think we have been able to establish the fact that as of today, Nigeria has two legitimate constitutions that were produced in a democracy. That's the 1960 Constitution and the 1963 Constitution. Hence, all decrees and acts, including the creation of the 1999 Constitution, should actually stand illegal and illegitimate. I'm sure I've been able to bring it to a conclusion on why the executive arm of the government, and I mean the current government, should subject the 1999 Constitution to a legality or a legitimate test at the Supreme Court. But let's take away some point. 1. If an unsuccessful coup is treasonable, then a successful coup against democracy is treasonable, and all actions taken by the coup plotters while in office are unlawful. We all know the case of Dimka, Oka, we had Maman Vatsa. All of them were involved in unsuccessful coups and they were sentenced to death. And they were killed by their partners in crime for carrying out those treasonable actions. So if that precedent has been set by the military, then we must also conclude that even those that were successful in truncating our democracy are treasonable. We are not saying the surviving generals or coup plotters should be subject to trials, but the point we are making is all the actions they have taken are illegal. Now let's bring it home. You can imagine few men in khaki sat down and sliced Nigeria to their own taste. 19 states, 12 states, now 36 states plus FCT. But today, 250 million Nigerians are unable to create a new state because of the constitution promulgated via a decree by these same few men. Since 1999, Nigerians have not been able to create a new state in this country because of the stringent clauses that were put in the 1999 constitution by these few khaki men. Finally, I think the key takeaway and the most important one for all of us is that the Nigerian people, with the help of the judiciary, must undo all illegal actions and laws, especially the last act of the military government, which is the 1999 Constitution. And the executive must take the lead and make this happen for Nigeria. That is all for this episode. I hope I'm making sense. If I'm not, please just tolerate me. But those are my thoughts. Those are my logical sequence of events to validate and confirm that whatever we are doing now is based on an illegal framework, and that is why Nigeria is not working. We need to undo that. Like we said, we are not throwing away the baby with the bathwater. We will save the baby, which is Nigeria, but we need to live and swim in a more conducive environment where all Nigerians of whatever ethnic group, whatever tribe, can determine how they want to be governed and how they want to relate with each other. We are not saying the unity of the country is subject to conversation. Like I said, that has been affirmed in the 1963 Constitution, but we must determine how we want to rule a diverse nation, how we want to govern ourselves, for us to be happy, for us to have peace in this country. On the next episode, a question that we must ask is there other past action, structure, and law of the past military regimes we must review and revoke? One that comes to mind is the Land Use Decree of 1978, which I will also be speaking to in one of the coming episodes. Thank you for listening. Please follow and subscribe to the 1759 podcast on WhatsApp, Spotify, YouTube, TikTok, and even Telegram. Drop your comment, let's keep the conversations going. Have a great evening and enjoy a chill drink. You deserve it. The economy is tough.